Okay, looks like I am live, and I don't know. Let me see. I need to make sure I know how to tell when people are here and when I should start. Oh, attendees. I'm going to push that button. Okay, just us. So let's talk about how much I love Allie and Francesca. They are the two shining stars at MedShift. Despite all of the hurdles, they always back me up and they give me the best positive feedback that anybody could have. I love them both dearly. Okay, it says that there are 4 people online, but I only see 2. I'm assuming I'm one of them. Allie and Francesca are 2 and 3. Does anybody know who the 4th one is, or am I just not looking correctly? Because I don't want to start when I shouldn't.
Hi, Bridget. So you refresh the top, it'll tell you who all is in here. Right now,
Hannah's here and Chelsea. Yeah. Okay, good. People are filing in. Okay, I apologize for that. The truth is, I don't actually do any of this. I just talk and, I do what I know how to do. And everybody at MedShift helps me do a webinar. So they are helping me as we do this. But anyway, so now I've got that part figured out. I'll just push update. Tonight is supposed to be a webinar, or is going to be a webinar that I want to be really, really conversational. But this is one that we're going to start, and we're going to do it the first Tuesday of every month, Tuesday evenings at 6 p.m. And we're going to base the content off of what you guys want to know and what goes well during the webinars. So the very first one, Allie and I kind of developed, and it was meant to be some of the stuff that you can do on the web that we wish we had time to cover during the Be Her trainings, but the Be Her trainings are so good and so intense and so geared towards actually injecting patients and learning that hands-on part. We realized there's a gap with the business side. And so we wanted to set up a forum so that we could talk about all that stuff that we don't get to cover on the hands-on portion, but that we can do offline. And so we thought it would be an awesome way if once a month we log in and we either answer questions, we talk about topics, anything that comes out of these may be what happens next month. And then also, meanwhile, in the middle of the sessions, you guys feel free to send me feedback personally or to Francesca or Allie, who really run the show. But we'll go ahead and get started. I do have somebody else who's going to come. She is a Be Her member from Charleston. So she lives here in town with me. I live in Charleston. And I think she's going to pop in a little bit later. And I told her she was going to log on, but I said, well, you could come to my house and do it with me if you want, because we really want it to be more like chat, etc. So Hannah and Chelsea, I appreciate you guys showing up. I'm going to talk, but feel free, and I encourage it, but feel free to kind of chat and discuss or ask questions. This first one is basically just things that, as a trainer, because I do train people privately, but also at the Be Her headquarters at MedShift. As a trainer, there's so many things that I'm so blessed to see when I go inside businesses. So I learn so much about what works, but I also learn so much about what doesn't work. Granted, I've learned a ton from my own successful business. That success was based on a lot of mistakes and failures, all of which I learned and grew from. So I'm able to share that. But now that I'm a trainer, I'm also able to share what I've learned from other people too. So that's kind of how we want these little chats to go. This first one, we made the slides. And so this one is kind of about knowing your worth. It's really because when I first started my med spa, people say you're so good at business. And because you have a successful business does not mean you're good at business. It just means something went well, right? And some of the things that went well was I had an accountant who told me what to do. I had a lawyer who told me what to do. I had a financial advisor, et cetera. So I want to be that person for the med spas. I want to be that person to kind of help you kind of learn and grow and maybe not make mistakes, or find out what questions you do have that may apply to your business so that you can then ask me later. So I came up with a few questions that I thought were probably the most obvious and kind of the biggest and the most important. Whoops, I just pushed next twice. Okay, look at me, I'm killing it now. Okay, so when people open med spas, a lot of the times they think like, okay, I want to open a med spa. What does that mean? You know, some people's med spa might be just a little side hustle. They still have their full-time job, but they go and inject at people's houses, or they have like a rented unit outside of a beauty salon, or they maybe get a little suite in a salon loft, or they may buy a 3,000 square foot building that's ready and has, you know, 4 empty rooms, a couple of lasers, whatever it is. But when I started, I kind of started from the ground up, and I started with nothing. I had a little bit of capital. I think if I remember correctly, it was under $20,000. I think I started with about $19,000 of product to get started. And that means, that includes my legal Zoom fees to get an LLC, medical malpractice, et cetera. I chose a few fillers, a few toxins, and a little bit of retail. So I basically opened shop with that. And I did it in my house, the house that I lived in at the time in 2016. I did it in the dining room, and I kind of converted the dining room. It was one of those like Pulte houses where they, those vinyl villages. But anyway, we walk in the front door and there's a room on the left, a room on the right. None of it made sense. And so I turned that left room, which I guess was one of the dining rooms or something, into this little suite. And I just started injecting. The reason I did that was because I had learned how to do toxin because I wanted it for myself. I think that's number one of the most important things. Only sell what you believe in. Like, sell things that you believe in, that you want, and that you can sell. I'd like to iterate that, because the truth is, if I don't believe in something, it's going to be really hard for me to convince you to believe in it, right? So anyway, we have an appearance from Charlie. I knew that would happen. I thought you were sleeping, bud. So anyway, sometimes people open up a spa and they're like, what do I need to do? And I'm happy to talk to you about like the whole checklist if you're starting from nothing. And one of the big problems is, and maybe not problems, that's the wrong word, but one of the big things or hurdles that comes up is when people open med spas, all of a sudden you have a Google business listing or something like that. And guess what? Sales reps start calling. Sales reps come to you and they start saying, hey, you wouldn't believe this. We've got this new Quanta laser. We've got this new multi-platform device, or this hair removal. Hair removal is all over your industry. And they'll come in and they give you these beautiful, shiny brochures, and they talk to you and say, we want you to make $500,000 a year. If you had 10 patients a day get leg hair removed, you're going to be a millionaire, whatever. And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, that sounds great. And they want to buy the equipment, right? They buy the equipment, but the problem is the sales rep didn't tell them, okay, you're going to have to get the clients. Just because you have the laser doesn't mean all of a sudden 10 people a day are going to want to get their leg hair removed or something like that. So I tell people, to be successful, you kind of start, and whatever successful grows and whatever isn't stops, right? So if you started by doing just things that are a little bit more like consumables, like your Botox, your fillers, PCDC, weight loss, whatever you want it to be, those little things that don't require big equipment, you'll have a nice array, a nice menu of services, and you can see what's going well. What's important is that you calculate into all of these equations that you have to put time into it, right? So if I tox a patient, even if I did their whole face, I could probably do the whole face with a consult in 10 minutes, right? That means I could probably do 6 tox patients an hour. Now, if I have a laser and I'm doing a laser hair removal on a leg, I might only be able to do 1 patient an hour, right? So when they're talking about 10 a day, it's like, where are these 10 people going to be? Like with this one laser, that laser is going to run 10 hours a day, and I'm not going to be able to do, all my toxin and all my other stuff. So that's going to be a little bit of a problem. You have to remember that the sales reps are there to sell equipment. and I love my sales reps. Don't get me wrong. Like sales reps can make or break your business, or no, I shouldn't say make or break your business. They can help you so much. They can definitely help you build your business, but you have to be the one that's strong. You have to say, this is what I believe in. And like a great example, one of our Be Her members, she came to a Be Her training and she said, I don't do faces. I just do bodies. She does the neck down. And I at first I was like, are you in the right room? You know what I mean? Like, I never thought of it like that. I never thought of the med spa as anything but the face. I know we've added on the body, but I always thought the face comes first. And when she had said that, and she said it with so much passion, and then I went and I trained her, I realized she's absolutely right. Do what you believe in and what you want, And so she started doing body treatments, things like hyperdilute radius, et cetera, et cetera. She's thinking about buying equipment. I had told her, I said, the thing about buying equipment is make sure you can pay it off, right? If you buy it cash, make sure you've earned it, that enough people are going to buy the equipment or buy the treatment from the equipment, that it's worth its while. But also make sure somebody has the time to do it. If it's just you and, running a hair removal laser and you're making 70, well, I don't know what hair removal on a leg costs, probably like $300 maybe for legs, $300 in an hour, but you're paying $150,000 mortgage off for this machine. You have to do that math to make sure it makes sense. So sometimes I say equipment is not the thing you should buy when you're opening your doors. And I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but I'm saying you have to be able to do that math to decide when to buy equipment. And so when I talk about the math, this is kind of one of my favorite things because it is something I learned on my own. It's not something I knew I had to do, right? A lot of people, when they start their business, if they do it right, which I didn't do it this way. I wouldn't say I did it wrong, but they get a business plan and they get investors and all that stuff. I didn't. I literally was learning to do toxin because I wanted it. And I was a hospitalist at the time and I worked in the ER as well. And I was injecting nurses constantly. And I started feeling guilty that I'm injecting people while at work, and I wasn't charging a big med spa markup or anything. I was really getting experience and practice, but I was making enough money to cover my insurance and my malpractice. So when I started feeling guilty because I was doing so many different people at a time, then is when I decided, okay, I need to open a place because I should not be doing this at work. You know what I mean? Like, I just felt like that was a little bit inappropriate. So that's kind of how the med spa came to me. It's not because I started a business. It's not because I, dreamed of this when I was a kid and that I always wanted it. It's because my skill turned it into that. Then I was sitting there one day, actually it was with my brother. We'll talk about him later. Just get, Charlie down. My brother had said to me, like, what's your profit margin? And I was like, what's a profit margin? I don't know. I just know I make money. You know what I mean? And it's like, how much money do you make? I don't know. Because the truth is you get all these deposits from the credit cards or whatever at the end of the month. You can add them up, but also you have your bills. Now, your bills may not be exactly what you bought that month, right? Like there's a point in time where I was buying 3 months supplies of toxin at a time. So the bill would come in 3 months at that time, a bill through 100 bottles. I was buying 100 vials of Xeomin at a time. And so the bill was like $48.95 or whatever. I think the price was $489 or something. So I was paying $48,000 every third month. So it was actually impossible for me to calculate how much I'm making, right? Because some bills, some months are higher. So one thing that's extremely important, and this, I mentioned this first, because if you start doing this, all of the other questions become easier to answer. And if any of you don't really want to hear this, feel free to say, Bridget, we don't need that part. So, but I'm going to keep going. But I also would like you to interrupt if you have questions or anything like that. Feel free to speak. There's a speak button that you can push. So how do you calculate profit margin? Luckily, when that question was asked by my brother, and I don't ever like to be wrong in front of my brother. So I think I just hemmed and hawed and figured I probably should figure out what a profit margin is. What a profit margin is, when they talk about you have a 50% profit margin or 20%, it means if you're doing a service that costs $100 to the patient, but it costs you $80, that's a 20% profit margin. You're only making 20%, or you are making 20%. If you have a procedure that costs $100 to the patient and costs you $10, then you're making 90. That's a 90% profit margin. Obviously, the higher the profit margin, the better. The other thing to remember in there is your time. And I'm going to keep going back to that. I know I mentioned it earlier and I'm going to mention it again, but your time is crucial to calculate into there because your time is actually limited, despite the fact that we all work way more than 24 hours a day in a 24-hour day. If we're starting med spa owner, you know, it's really 30 hours because your brain's doing double all the time. But the profit margin calculation, when I first started, I did everything on paper. I had paper charts and I had a paper schedule. And in the morning, I would print my schedule, and it just basically had the person's name and the service that they signed up for. Some of it was just consultation, so I didn't know. Some of it would say toxin treatment, you know, and they would get a 10-minute appointment. Some would say filler treatment, they'd get a 20-minute. So anyway, I'd print that list out so that I would know who's coming without having to log into a computer, because usually I didn't really leave the room. I had, you know, gloves and syringes going constantly. So I would print that paper out. And then when I wanted to know profit margin, I started saying, okay, find out what you use per day and how much money you make per day. And then it became really easy. So next to every person's name, so when they would leave, I would write right on this little schedule, I would say, you know, Chelsea, she got 20 units glabella, charge $200. This is for instance. There's not really a Chelsea. But anyway, she paid $200. And so then I looked and said, okay, but I had to buy 20 units of toxin and I bought them at approximately $5 a unit. Now that isn't true, right? Because a lot of times we get discounts, et cetera. So normally it's $495 a bottle. So $5 a unit. I was actually getting it down to almost $4 a unit because of sampling or whatever, you know, for whatever reason. So I would say, okay, 20 units at $4 was $80. So it cost me $80 and I made $200. Now this does not account for, oh good, Kendall's here. This does not account for, come on in. Sorry about that. No, you're fine. It's just my door makes a lot of noise. Hi. Good. Thank you for joining us. I told everybody you were coming. You can have a seat right here if you want. Oh. Watch out for Charlie. So this is Kendall. Sorry, she's joining us. So she was going to log in with us. And I was like, well, just do it with me from the house because we wanted it really chatty. So if I have a client who spent $200 on toxin that cost me $80, I've made $120, right? So that's where I'm saying my profit margin. Now, at the end of the month is when you'll add in your utilities or your staff costs or your processing fees, all of that stuff. But so I'm just talking about like the gross profit margins. The next client might come in and maybe that client gets Radiesse. She has 2 syringes of Radiesse in her cheeks. And then she also gets PCDC in her chin. Her chin, I charged her $6 for, but I got PCDC from a compounding pharmacy for $10 a unit, so only cost me $20. Her Radiesse cost me like $300 a syringe, but I charged $600. So basically, I would take the gross that I made, and then I would take the cost of goods sold. So if you do your own taxes, you'll know the COGS, the cost of goods sold, whatever that was. And then I would, you know, put that in. Now there's always going to be these little frivolous costs like syringes, alcohol wipes, swabs and stuff. And I do keep that cost low just because I'm kind of a penny pincher, you know, like I will buy, as long as the brand works, like BD syringes. Yes, they're great. They work fine, but they cost $70 for 100 of them. Whereas then I found Sure Comfort. They work just as great and they cost $150 or sorry, $15 for a box of 100 of them. Guess who I'm going to go with? Sure Comfort. So I do keep those like incidental costs low. Now I did end up calculating like how many gauze pads do I go through a month? How much? Because I was going through a lot. Like this is when I was in my heyday, I was probably using 1,000 units of toxin a day. So there, you know, at the end of the day, I was probably spending $100 in materials and it almost became negligible because my materials cost was so low. But it also, when I started doing that, so now if you've pictured, I've got these clients and I'm writing this line list of what they've bought, what they get. Not only am I knowing my profit margins, I'm knowing how much time I spent with each patient. I'm getting my average sales, you know, so when I first started, my average sale was under $200. That means nobody was really even buying 20 units. You know, they might be getting like little lip flips or just trying half a glabella or something like that. And when my spa was in its heyday, the average sale per person was about $1,500. Now that's cool. It's cool to watch that grow because I think what that means is they're growing their confidence in me, right? And that once they're confident, they're okay separating from that checkbook and they're happier to do it. Or to spend it, you know, they feel comfortable. And so that's how everybody should go. The other thing that I was realizing as I did that was how much time certain things would take to make. So I'd have, you know, a person on there, like if we use the Radiesse example, maybe she was 12 plus 600. She was $1,800 tab, right? She was in 20 minutes because she was in a filler appointment. And then I realized my toxin was in 10 minutes and I made $100. It's like, well, I almost made 10 times as much, but in just double the amount of time. So then I started realizing, okay, profit margins are awesome, but you have to get them in the right amount of time. You know, when a person sells you a laser and says, if you do, you know, these legs, you'll make $700 per pair of legs that walks in the door. It's like, fine, but that was over an hour. When I realized I can make, you know, I can do 6 filler people in an hour. Like if I did lips were a 10-minute appointment, literally, because I would have them numb and I would inject them. I would pre-fill my syringes. I had it already and it was a quick appointment. I realized, well, if the profit margin on a lip filler is more like $500 and I can do 5 or 6 of them in an hour, that's way better than running a laser on legs, right? So the profit margin thing is something I wish I had done sooner, way before my brother had asked me to, but also it was eye-opening because I learned the value of my time and I also learned what I like doing. And guess what I like doing the most? The things that were quickest or made the most money, right? So if something took an hour, but I was going to make $10,000, absolutely, I'd block off an hour. If something was only going to make, you know, $50, I would not block off an hour. You know, that's when I realized, like, I'm not going to do dermaplaning and hydrofacial and stuff like that. That stuff takes a long time, but the dollars, the profit dollars in it just aren't there. So I do, if you guys don't already do this, I encourage you to try. It's extremely fun to kind of calculate your own profit margin, but it's really fun if you do it yourself manually, like I'm talking about. You will get a very good grasp on how you're spending your time and where your time is being rewarded, you know, if that makes sense. Do you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Like your time is just as valuable as anything, because guess what? I'm getting paid per hour, right? Every hour that I work. And if I don't work, I'm not getting paid at all. So if you leave here and just do that for a couple of days with your clients and write it out, I think you would probably be fascinated at not only what your profit margin probably is close to, and you'll never get right profit margin because somebody used a cannula and that was $10 or whatever, but you're going to get really close. But also what this is going to tell you is when to add high profit margin stuff and when to add low profit margin stuff, right? Because all of it's important. And I'm not saying any of it you should do or shouldn't do. I'm just saying you should know when to do it so that you don't ever go under, you know, and that's the biggest, I think, problem with med spas is they don't know when to do something. And many med spas could have been successful had they done things in a different order. You know, it's just sometimes they want to cut the line before they've given it enough time because they overinvested in the on the front end. So that's my profit margin thing. That was a really cool learning experience for me, and it's fun, but it's something I actually encourage people to do. The next question that I get a lot is retail. People are like, what should I sell? I want to sell retail. Everybody has retail. This is an important thing to remember too. Retail doesn't take time. Usually the retail client is buying their retail at the time of their appointment, right? So even though retail may have a very poor profit margin, and I say poor because I think it's like 50%, but you're going to put a sale on, or you're going to say 20% off of, you know, BioCutis, NeoCutis because of whatever. And so that 20% though, it comes off your profit. It does not come off the cost. The cost is the same regardless. So if you bought your BioSerum at $180 and you sold it for $300, you made $120. If you sold it for $250, you made $70, right? Because every time you do a sale, your profit comes down. And so that's why I say it's a kind of low profit thing. And honestly, in my experience, and I'm not speaking for everyone, you do have those diehards that like really do love their skin and they do believe in it. But you also have those people that are only going to buy stuff when it's on sale or when they have like the moment. You know, it's not always that everything is in everybody's budget like we wish that it was. So the thing about retail is, though, if you're treating people's faces or their hands or whatever, but you're not giving them the proper aftercare or post-care or pre-care, you kind of are doing them a disservice. Like I do like to tell people, you know, I can treat you, I can inject your face every 90 days for the rest of your life, but twice a day or more, you get the opportunity to take good care of your face too. And it is unbelievable the number of people that will pay for toxin but will not pay for sunscreen, and I think we're getting better about that. I think the industry's changing, but when I first started, sunscreen, vitamin C, they were add-ons, and I'm like, those are not nice to haves, those are must haves. We have to protect this investment. The antioxidants are what's going to keep you from aging. The sunscreen is going to prevent photo damage. Tretinoins, growth factors, those are what are going to build collagen. If you can pay a few $100s a month, or maybe not even that much, and just kind of protect your investment, the investment being what I've done to it with my needle, you're going to have a better result. But also, you're going to come to me. If I don't sell any retail, you're going to go somewhere to get it, right? Unfortunately, you may not get good advice. And so if you come to me to buy my retail, you're going to get my opinion on why my retail, why I've chosen it, what I think you should get, and you'll get some good guidance. Anybody can log on to thedermstore.com and say, oh my gosh, this gets 5-star, whatever, this Jan Marini product. But if they don't know the science behind it, they don't know the data, they're just buying it because that picture was really pretty. And I think it's important for you as the med spa owner or employee or whomever you are, that you sell the whole package, and I'm positive if you're a member of Be Her, which this invitation to tonight was a very limited one because we're just starting it. So I know you guys are Be Her members. If you're a Be Her member, the value in selling, the value in educating your patients, and the value in knowing the science behind what you do. If a client ever asks you, why am I doing Xeomin instead of Botox? And you go, it doesn't matter, I don't care. You're going to just lose trust, right? You have to have some opinion because you're doing it. If you sell it, you probably have an opinion. So when I say, should I add retail? I think everybody should start with a little bit, because we want them to know that this is not just something that we do at the office. This is something you should do at home. Now, what retail you choose, it doesn't matter. I mean, obviously there's better choices in my opinion, but it's just that some spas will own 10 different lines and some will own 2, The one thing I do want to remind you of though, when you sell retail, you're giving that person like a to-do list when they go home, right? So they're washing their face, and then they're doing their toner or doing their growth factor, doing their eye serum. Every time they're doing that, they're thinking about what they've paid for because they see it. And I see this, I say, Dr. Kendall sold me this eye cream. Oh, you know what? I wonder, do I need my crow's feet done? It's a constant reminder of their visit with you. And if that was a good visit, that's going to give you loyalty and give you return clientele. One of the things I love about Be Her and MedShift is they have the ability to private label a lot of stuff. And this was not planned, but this is actually on my table. This is Hydrobomb Arnica. This is something that Be Her and MedShift sell. I love this because it's a lip treatment, but it has arnica in it because everybody knows lips are vascular. And when we inject lips, you're probably going to bruise. If you didn't, it's not my fault. It's just luck. Truth is, lips are bruisey, eyes are bruisey. We try to be gentle. We try to use sharp needles. But this Hydrobomb Arnica, I happen to love. And so it's around my house everywhere. That's why it just happened to be sitting there. But if you buy it through Be Her, you can get a Hydrobomb Arnica that says Pele Bonita Med Spa or Dr. Conoverse Med Spa, whatever you want. You can have it on private label. Now, if that private label has your name on it and your phone number, you're going to tell people about it too, right? Or you're going to remember it when you see it. So I do think retail is a good way for people to remember that they like you. Just like when you're having a good hair day, or your highlights look good in a picture, you think of your hair lady and you're like, I need to tell her my highlights look good if you're, a nice human. And just if you guys are injecting, you probably know people come all the time and say things like, I love this so much, or they'll send you like a selfie from the rearview mirror. Look, no lines, and that means they're happy and they're thinking about you. So it's nice to have a little retail at their house to make them keep thinking about you. But it's even better if you can private label it. Private labeling just means your name is there. I used to give out pens that said Pele Bonita, just little reminders of things that they bought that they liked. And if you're like me, sometimes like I go in my closet, this is going to sound superficial, turn off recording. No, anyway, you go in your closet and you see something like this pair of shoes that I bought or this dress, and I see it and it brings me joy. I maybe have never worn it, but I love that dress and I can't wait for an occasion to wear it. But it reminds me of a good, happy experience. As my med spa was growing and developing, I had people come to me and they would say, I don't know what I want, but I just got my tax check and I love what you do. So give me an idea. Now that's when you're killing it. When people are like, every time I have money, I'm going to go to somewhere that makes me happy or something that I've had before that I enjoyed. And, if they chose me, then I'm all in. I think that's great, and I'm not like going to just put fillers in people that don't need it, but it just means that they were ready and they want my opinion and they really trust it. So that's nice. And the building loyalty, to me, having return clients is far more valuable than having numbers of clients, because number of clients you got because of SEO optimization or because of a sale on Instagram or Groupon or whatever, those aren't real. Those are one-offs, and they aren't really going to be good referrals. Referrals are where you want your people. So you want loyal people, and you want them to tell their friends. Those are the people that are not coupon shopping or price shopping or anything like that. They're you and they're yours. That's why I like to have retail. And I do suggest starting with a little bit. And it doesn't have to be a whole line. It just has to be the things that you think are important. And if you don't know what's important, I obviously could talk your ear off about this all day. So I'm happy to after the webinar if we want to. What do you think? You agree?
Yeah, I was just thinking about how I do like the retail. I feel like everyone you almost get the responsibility of benefiting the patient. Like they'll give it to you, and you're like, that's not my line, but they'll,
yeah,
I don't have anything to do with the body, but then they're like, oh my God, thank you so much.
Exactly.
So,
and anytime that person's happy, they're coming back. You know what? When they say thank you, and it is our job to educate them, but also I tell people all the time, you just spent $1,200 with me. I think you should spend the extra $200 on the eye cream and the vitamin C just to keep all this good. And actually it'll look better. If you show before and afters too, sometimes they're pretty convinced. And if you're selling medical grade products, all those before and afters are true. They're FDA approved. And that's why I stick to medical grade. Some people do both, like a professional and a medical grade. I just never had a cosmetologist or an esthetician. So I always had medical grade. So there's the retail question. Push it next. Hold on. Let me see if I have another slide.
Vizia machine is really good to.
Oh, the Vizia? That's a good idea. Do you guys know what that one is? The Vizia is the one. Well, there's a few of them, but the Vizia is the Cartessa one that you put your head in, and it'll do a scan, and it kind of tells you your biological looking age. It'll tell you what your pigmentation is, wrinkles, and it gives you suggestions. So that's a neat way to also. If you have the ability and the place to do it, that's a neat way to kind of show people. Then they see actual improvement from the computer. If you give them a product and they come back 3 months later and they've been using it, like you said, twice a day or whatever, and they see their results on the Vizia, because anytime gradual changes are occurring, it's sometimes hard for the person to see. So I love that idea. I've had people before say, I can't tell a difference. And I show them the before and after, and they say, I apologize. This is amazing. Let me go tell all my friends. So the Vizia is another way to do that. Okay, how do I choose what services to offer? This kind of goes back to the equipment thing. Myself being an injector, and that's really how I started and really all I do. As an injector, I started with toxin and filler. Okay. Now, as things came out, and this is probably partly my passion for science and data and knowing stuff, but when things come out, and I was all in. I had drank that Kool-Aid. Anytime something would come out, that was what I did at night. I would surf the web and read journals in my bed and say, Renuvia, what's this new filler? I want to know. And it doesn't mean I offered it, but it means I knew it was out there. I think it's very important to know what's out there, because you don't have to offer it, but you do need to tell people why you don't. So if they say, oh, I heard about this Sculptra booty lift in Miami for $3,000. I want that. Can you do it? And you don't know what Sculptra booty lift in Miami for $3,000 is. You're like, I don't know. I'm going to have to Google that or research it. It might make you look like you aren't clear on the industry if they really know what they're talking about, or it might make you look like you don't care. You only do what you do. I think it's important to choose the services you offer and choose the ones you don't, because you know what they are. If you're in this industry, I think it's so important to know all of the options. So if somebody comes to me, for example, and this is real life, I'm not trying to dog anybody, but if somebody comes to me and they say hey, Bridget, I want Voluma in my cheeks. And I have to say, I can't. I don't buy Voluma. I don't carry it. I only do Radiesse cheeks or, whatever. They might say, why? And I go, well, because Voluma is, 1 cc per syringe. It's only a hyaluronic acid. Radiesse is a biostimulatory. It's 1.5 cc per syringe. The cost is equivalent. I try to make sure all my services are the same cost, because I don't want people picking brand. I want to pick the brand, because honestly, I think there is one product that might be absolute best for Dr. Kendall. Maybe the second runner up is, the next one, but I want to tell her what I think is the best. And I want her to go with what I suggested, because obviously I think it's the best. I don't want anybody leaving with something that I didn't think was the best idea, because guess what they're going to say? Bridget did this. I got this from Bridget. So guess what? I want it to be what I think will look the best. And that doesn't mean my opinion or my aesthetic has to match everybody else's. It just means I have to have enough people that like the way I do things. And you'll know that if your business is growing. So when you're trying to decide what services to offer, research them, find out how much it would cost to carry it, how long it would take to do, and what your profit margin would be. But you also have to remember, is this something my current clients will buy? Because that's who it's going to start with, right? The current client is the one that you're selling to. You can put out a Groupon or an Instagram ad and get new clients because you carry it, but it's not going to be the most likely scenario. Most likely when you get a new thing, you're going to tell your favorites or your diehards or whatever, and they're going to help you kind of trial it as you introduce it. So this question, I added it in, and I could probably talk about it for years. And this is something that I offline constantly, and I love doing it. So I'm not complaining, but I'm saying I get constant questions when people say, Bridget, have you heard of this? I'm thinking about it. Should I buy it? And if I haven't heard of it, I look it up, and I love having that conversation with people. If I have heard of it, I say, okay, well, what are you doing now? Who are your people? How much money are you making on that? And how many people do you think, so it's good to have that conversation. And it doesn't mean that the answer being no means you shouldn't do it. It might mean you shouldn't do it yet, or that might be your next thing, but it's not quite time, So it's interesting to think about, but it all goes back to that profit margin sheet. You have to remember, how long did this take me, and how much did it cost me, and how much did I make on it? Okay, next slide. Wait, did I skip one? I might have. I think we had one more question, or we should go to the question and answer, but let me double check. Allie, you're so cute. You texted me and I didn't read it. Profit margins, retail, what services, and when do we buy equipment? Yeah, so those were the beginning things that I wanted to talk about for kind of starting and opening up a med spa. What other kind of questions, like you opened a med spa in Florida, what were the biggest things that you really pondered over when you were opening it? Like, what did you really have to think about?
I really thought about, I guess, trying to stay within my clients' like price range, and not adding too many things that would be like a cost, too much of a burden, like initially, like startup cost. I think I thought a lot about new stuff too. Always trying to have find out the newest devices or whatever. But I'm trying to think about your question.
Well, the price thing is so important. I don't know if this is true for you guys, but I'm sure it's true for somebody. One of the hardest things for me, because I'm not a businesswoman and I don't own stores and I don't sell, or I didn't until now. It was hard to charge people money.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Yes, people come in and they want this and this and this. And I'm like, you're going to buy 4 syringes of fillers. It's going to cost $2,400. How do I break it to her? And I would be like this, and I'd say, okay, it came out 24. And I'm like, I bet I could do it for 2,000. And so I would say, what about 1,800, because I would lowball myself. I was so scared to spend their money. I would come up with a price and they were like, oh, okay, well, I brought 3,000. That's great. And I'm like, well, shit, she could have paid 2,400. It's so hard to charge people money, but we have to remember, when people come in the doors with money, they're probably going to spend it, or they intended to spend it, and if they aren't going to spend it with you, they've saved it and they may spend it somewhere else. So, I had this injector once. She was the sweetest thing. She was doing toxin and fat dissolving on a client, and it was like $900. And she came to me afterwards. She goes, Bridget, I feel so bad. I said, why? She goes, she's closing on a house tomorrow, and closing on a house, and the escrow came out $4,000 more, and she's worried about it, and her boyfriend. And I'm like, you should not be buying Botox. I was like, Meg, you shouldn't tell people how they should spend their money. If they have $900 and they want to get rid of their double chin and a few crow's feet, they're going to, and they're either going to do it with you, or if you turn them down and say, honey, you need to be putting that towards your mortgage, they're not going to listen to you. They're going to go get their Botox and their crow's feet from someone else, So I'm glad that I'm not the only one. Yeah. It's hard to take people's money.
And the issue is when you're just starting out. I did a concierge sort of medical services. So people would come to my house or I'd go to their house, and it was usually my friends. And so it was really difficult because I always wanted to give them a deal, a special, be better than any other pricing around, but I never had a set price list. So I think once I actually created a price list and I followed that list, that was when it became a little less stressful when it came to like calculating. But
well, it's probably smart to have it written down, because you're right. I always am terrible with my friends, but you know what? Your friends want you to have a good business. You know, I saw a meme once that said like, what's the best way to support your friend's business? It's like their posts, buy their services, tip them. You know what I mean? It's like, just because they're your friends doesn't mean you shouldn't pay them. I tell people all the time that ask me for a discount. Well, I don't, but I think it in my head all the time. You know, if you're asking me for $10 a unit when I told you it was 12, those $2 a unit that come off did not come off the cost. All they did was come off the price. And that means they're saying I deserve a pay cut? Like what? I'm busy. I'm booked out. You waited 2 weeks for this appointment, and then you're going to come in here and ask for a discount? Like you want me to take a pay cut? And I'm doing a great job. You know, I don't think they mean it like that. They don't understand that you're getting a pay cut, but you actually are, because somebody else would have taken that spot because you're fully booked and you're booked out 2 weeks, you know? That's a great point. That's one of the things I tell people when they start out: be firm on your prices. Do not be afraid to charge people money. I make sure before I ever inject anything, when I've done my whole face consult and I've decided what they want, I write it down and I add it up physically manually. And I say, okay, that will probably be $1,700. And I write that number down because I've already told them $1,700 and I can't change it. If they say, okay, I only have $1,500, then I look at the list and I go, well, we could take the crow's feet off. Or I look at the list and I go, oh, this PCDC on here is like 90% profit margin. I'm going to say, okay, I'll do it for $1,500. You've been a good client. I'll do it. But I know the math, right? Because I've already done my profit margins thing. So I'm able to look and kind of say, okay, now if it's somebody I haven't met, I usually don't discount anybody that's a stranger, because I feel like, why would I give a stranger a better deal than a really good client who comes in every 3 months? Those clients that are coming to me every 3 months, those are the ones that I discount, and I'll do it all the time. They don't even ask, but then they tip. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a funny game. But anyway, that's an interesting thing. I think charging people money was the hardest thing for me to do at first. I love doing it. I love the compliments, but telling them you owe me $2,000 is hard, you know, but it turns out it's really fun too. Anybody else with a question? Let me see. I'm making sure we have a chat and a Q&A. Oh yeah, starting with products. Okay. Stay on top of new treatments and procedures. I will tell you, so one of the best ways to stay on top of the new stuff is to make sure that you're following things on Instagram. This does not mean Instagram is teaching you. It's just telling you what's out there and what's trending. Okay. Don't go to Instagram and learn how to do something. Instagram is just to tell you it's out there. Then go to the journals. When you see something, go to the journals. If you go to a conference, I'm a shopper anyway, but I love the expo halls. I don't care if I have 100 squeeze balls, I'll take another one that's shaped like a brain. That's the stupidest thing that I have, but I like free swag. But also when I come home from those expos, I'm like, oh, what is this Livion stem cell? And then I look it up, because obviously I had some little reminder. That's the whole thing about like having retail at your house. Have some little reminder from the expo. I look it up and I at least have the knowledge. So whether or not I choose to add it, if somebody asks me, do you have Livion? I can be like, no, because of this. Or I can say, yep, because of this. I love it, but I have a good reason. So one of the best ways I would say to kind of figure it out is just to follow the industry. If you're in this industry, you have to be in the industry. It means it needs to be your hobby. It needs to be your passion. You need to love it. Without those things, it's going to be really hard to succeed. If you're just going in like it's a job, you should work at somebody else's med spa, but if it's your med spa, you probably do love it. And anytime you total out your credit cards at the end of the day, when you see a comma that you didn't see before, or, fifth digit when you're used to 4, it's gratifying, that's growth, and that's like building and learning. And I think everybody kind of feels proud when they see that happening. Any other questions?
I was going to say some journals cost money, right, to access. But I think if you go to that company's website and you log in with your provider details, they will have a section with education, and it will have the journal articles that you can access.
Absolutely true. Yeah, if you can't find a journal because it's paid or it's a paid subscription, you can either go to the sponsor, they will 100% send you any journal that they're quoted in for free, or you can go to a lot of these companies have their own medical forums, or like Galderma, the Gain, sites. They have all these. Yeah, they're very good. And like XMedica, I love XMedica. I think that's great. And you get CMEs and it's free. I love using all those resources. I will tell you though, in order to make money, the less money you spend, the more you make. So I'm a huge fan of finding out what's free. I love the MERS Medical Forum. I love the Galderma, the Gain. I love XMedica. I love, conferences. And a lot of times I go to conferences and I think to myself, I haven't changed anything. But the truth is, maybe I didn't change anything, but I've learned how other people do stuff. And I have enough knowledge now to say, I still like the way I'm doing it. Now, sometimes I'll leave a conference and be like, I'm totally going to try that. I had somebody actually send me this link on TikTok. Somebody did this bolus technique of radius to the hands. They put this big bolus on the hand on each one. And then they told the patient, sit on your hands to kind of mush it down. And I was like, I will never do that. I will stick with my cannula and go through threads. Like, if you guys have ever mushed a ball of radius, it's work. I'm talking straight radius, like 1.5 cc's radius. I'm not talking diluted or hyper diluted. So it's like, okay, I've learned that. I will not add it. Maybe I would go home and try it, and I'd be like, okay, I really love doing that. And maybe Dr. Kendall loves doing it and I don't. That's fine. We can each have our own ways. But when somebody sends me a link and says, have you heard of this? And I go, yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't do it because of da, 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 da. It's good to have good reasons why. Good one.
Yeah. What about, so I know, like if you were to take on a brand like Nutrafol, they
I love Nutrafol.
I think it's like a $2,000 minimum order.
Yes.
What would you say starting out, what would be your cutoff for a minimum order cost?
If you really love the line, I'll tell you, this is a true story, and I'm not dogging ZO or anything, but like ZO, they have a huge line and they probably have like 38 SKUs. But to get there, it wasn't even the minimum order that turned me off. It was that you had to order so many from every category. And I'm like, well, I don't like your vitamin C, so I don't want to carry your vitamin C. I want to carry the original Obage vitamin C. So that was something that turned me off. I didn't want to carry the whole line. And, I still, if you look in my bathroom, you'll know I'm not brand loyal, I'm product loyal. I will use Neocutis's bioserums. I think they have the best growth factors ever, but they're not the best vitamin C. I'm sorry, Neocutis, if you're logged in, but you're not the best vitamin C, so I don't carry it. But I have to get a whole nother line because I feel vitamin C is extremely important.
And a lot of companies will do buybacks, which is great.
That is lovely. If you
want to switch,
if you buy something and you want to switch, yeah, a lot of times they'll say, we'll buy back whatever you have left over of this product. And as long as you spend twice as much of that in our brand. So if you do get into like a hiccup and you're like, oh my gosh, I have 85 boxes of Upneek that I can't sell, whoever you're going to, open a new account with, tell them, do you do a buyback? That's a great way to, number one, get rid of stuff that either didn't sell or is about to expire, or you weren't good at selling. Maybe it's really good at selling in your neighbor's spa, but not yours. That's fine. Just get rid of it, but make somebody else pay for it. And on retail, they love doing that. I have sold back many, many things. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. I'm glad you brought that up. So is there a price to start at? No, not necessarily. I think most things are pretty reasonable. If you're going to open, I think like Elastins is around $3,500 per order. Some people will have like a 6 product minimum. I think Obage makes you order 6 or more at a time. So everybody's a little bit different. Just do the math and see how much space you have on a shelf and can you do it? Can you sell it? How many lines do you want? But also not only the opening order, make sure you know what follow-up orders are. So if they only do free shipping when you order $5,000 at a time, it could get really expensive to carry that line. I like lines that once I'm a client, I've got an opening order, I've, showed my loyalty, then a minimum order of $100 is what I want, because I want to be able to say, hey, overnight me 6 more youth intensive creams, and like they come in the mail. So I think it is good to know the whole company's policy and make sure that it's something that you can afford. I'm also a big fan of buying things that I already have the money for. So either I'm not saying don't do the 90-day terms. If they're giving you terms, use your terms, but pay them off at the end of the term. You know what I mean? Make sure that you can pay it off. It's very, very hard to get out of. Once you've dug a hole, it's hard to get out of it. So you want to make sure that you're staying kind of above the line and that you have enough money to support what you're doing.
Another question that I had, or was just thinking about, kind of going back to like being able to charge your friends and family, like what is your friends and family price? What do you price them at? And then do you have like, what's your best, like, I feel like I always have to have a discount in my back pocket for like on the fly if somebody, asks for a discount or whatever. And I feel like I usually use the MERS $50 off as like a starter, but is there any?
I do give my family very, very steep discounts. Usually I'll say, you can have it at cost, but I do the retail cost, and like, even if, let's say like Versa, for example, I think per syringe, it could be $250, but if you buy 100 syringes, it might be 150. I'll be like, the cost is $250 because that's really what it would cost. And the truth is, I'm spending $5,000 a month just to run this place, right? So why should anybody get anything for free? So at cost means it's free. I'm making nothing, right? So I do want to make a little bit of money because I pay for a medical director. I pay for medical malpractice. I pay for my licenses. I pay for my DEAs. All that stuff costs money. And so you have to remember, if people want something for free and it's costing you money, it's not worth doing. I'm happy to give my friends and family, or I'll do like, I think this is not really supposed to happen, but I'll barter all the time. Like I have a cat sitter who I do her glabella for her. She watches my cats when I travel, and every 3 months she's got a frozen brow,
My hair lady.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But to me, that's the value, right? I don't want Rover. I want my neighbor who I trust, who I love, to come in here and give poor Charlie his anxiety medicine because I'm out of town. That's a good question. The one thing I do though, when I discount, I always say, do not tell anyone this, because that's another pet peeve of mine. When I go online and I see like Subio or Chad Deal, they're both notorious for doing this, say, what is the cost of Botox? Well, we pay $600 a bottle and a syringe of Juvederm is $400. I'm like, you jerks. Like, our clients don't need to know what it costs, right? Because none of those costs really add in real life, which is my license, my director, my insurance, So I don't like ever telling anybody the cost. So if I tell people you can have it at cost, what I say is you can have like 30% off, which is like close to cost. I'll say it in a way so that they don't know the actual cost, or I'll say, normally it's $700, but I do it for $500. And I'll tell you what, though, I love my friends and my family, but they are the worst. They don't pay full price, and they will bug you. They will bug you constantly. Like, is this right? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I treat hundreds of people a month and they don't complain. They sending snaps of their lips to all their friends. And here you are like, does this look uneven? And I'm like, no, it's fine. Stop it. You didn't even pay full price. That's the problem with sales. I think sales, you also get people like that.
What is your best sales advice? I feel like over at Conifer Aesthetics, we're always talking about how we could increase our ability to sell things. And what would you say? Honestly, I'll tell you all the time, I'm not a salesperson, but I'm so good at sales. But you know why? It's because I believe in it. Because I only sell things I like. If I'm walking around and somebody says, what sunscreen? I'm like, I love this one. Try it, or I might say this one, but a lot of people like this one. Like, there's always, going to be some variance, but selling is not really about having a good skill. It's about believing it. It's about being confident, and it's about explaining that. Like, if I told you how much I love Tone Smart and that I did this and it was waterproof and I did that and I wore a hat and I didn't reapply it, and if I sounded confident and happy and excited about it, you'd probably try it. Oh, for sure.
But if I said, it doesn't matter, use anything as long as it's SPF 30, you'd probably be like, I'm going to go to CVS then, bitch, this stuff's $48. Just kidding. This isn't recorded, right? That's a good one. That's good. Sales are hard. It's honestly, I don't even think of it as being a salesperson. I just think about it as loving what I do. If I love it and it comes across, people want it too, and it's like that law of attraction. If you're around happy people, you're going to leave pretty happy. If somebody around you is laughing, you're automatically going to smile because there's something funny going on. I have no idea what those people at that table said, but it makes me smile, And so if I'm walking around smiling, talking about sunscreen, Kendall's going to be like, I want that sunscreen. She's so happy. That's a little bit of a stretch, but anyway, does anybody that's logged on have any questions? I know we only have a couple of minutes left. I think this is a really good testament of the fact that I can just talk about something I love forever with no interruptions. Okay, well, if nobody else has questions, which I don't think so, I'm going to double check my chat box. Then I am going to say, let's wrap it up. I appreciate you guys logging on. Like I said, this was a trial and we only invited a few of our Be Her members. And so we are probably going to open it up. But if you guys liked this and you like to kind of have these dialogues, which, will grow, but we do want to keep it kind of small because we want it to be more like a fireside chat than anything else. Feel free to send me or anybody else your feedback. I'm going to write in here, and I think you guys have my information, but I'm going to write in the chat my contact because I want you to have it. And give me advice, feedback, or ask questions. If I touched on anything that you're not sure about and didn't want to cover right here, feel free to ask me offline. I'm happy to do that. I always say, I've said this 100,000 times, I am approachable. If I didn't answer you, it's probably just because I'm a ditz. It's not because I didn't want to. I love what I do. I love this community. I love sharing. I love educating, and I love making everybody be the best, and I really feel like I have the ability to do that because of MedShift and what they've done for me. I also want to thank you, Allie, because you volunteered your Tuesday nights to do this for me every single month, and I appreciate it. And we couldn't do any of this without her. She actually runs the whole Be Her program. It's kind of shocking. Her and 40 other people. But anyway, I appreciate all you guys. I did put my phone number and my email in the chat box. So if you want to ask questions offline, please do. Or if you have feedback for the next session, I would love to hear it. And thank you for coming to join us. If anybody ever wants to do it in person, we should totally do that. Everybody's allowed or invited to my kitchen table. We could definitely do it here if you're in Charleston or wherever I am on those Tuesdays. And definitely feel free to log in with your cameras and stuff too. But thank you all. If nobody has any other questions, then I think we will say good night.
Good night.
Thank you.